What is your hahaha? Oh wait, your serious moment. When my 60-year-old father told me he broke his hip paragliding into the roof of his hotel. New friend, I really shouldn't be doing so many extreme sports, but you gotta live your life, right? I'm gonna end up in a wheelchair by the time I'm 30. For me, I know, right? New friend, no I mean really, I have a degenerative disease that's going to ruin my body by my 30s, so I'm trying to live my life now. I bet that this is one of the memories that randomly comes back when you're trying to sleep. I listed my Ford Explorer for sale. A guy emailed me to trade his 2018 Kia Forte or something. I didn't really need one since my fleet already had a 2013 Kia Forte, but he emailed me a few times saying he wants my Explorer but owes money on his Kia. I said how much? He said it's an 8-year finance deal, so need to pay in total $45K. And he wanted my car. I could buy that car right now for $25 $30K at the dealership brand new. He was dead serious. Waking up from general anesthesia, one of the nurses by my hospital bed gently informs me that my heart had stopped while I was under. I thought I was dreaming for a while and didn't take it seriously. Then my dad showed up and I saw the panic on his face. Then I phoned my mum and she had obviously been crying her eyes out. Then I took it seriously. This was a few years ago. I forgot how the topic was brought up, but I clearly remember my older sister saying, "There aren't any modern buildings in Egypt, just pyramids." Well, that's why the pyramids are so big. They have to house the whole Egyptian population. When I was in high school, I received a message over MSN from a buddy saying, "Mitch is dead." Thinking he got into trouble, I responded with, "Haha, what did he do?" It turns out, he had a brain aneurysm while driving home from school. When I was in college, 2 friends and I went out to a cheap Chinese buffet for a weekday lunch. We were probably not particularly well groomed or dressed at the time. So at a nearby table there are a woman and a man having lunch, both dressed in business attire. After they finish, the woman, probably in her 20s, comes over to our table out of nowhere and starts chatting with us, making normal chit chat. Kind of odd, but maybe she's just friendly. All of a sudden she asks, "Do you guys like to frick?" We just looked at each other and laughed nervously because how do you respond to that in this situation? She just stood there, completely serious. I don't even remember what we said to her after that. This was 20 plus years ago, but despite sounding like the beginning of a porno, it was only followed by another round at the buffet, not a gangbang. We need some cheap butt porno stand-ins who look like someone the average internet slob could identify with. You guys would be perfect. I asked a co-worker what his son's name was, and he answered Legolas. After 2 seconds of laughing, I realized he wasn't laughing. His son is actually named Legolas. Same here. I met a little boy named Merlin and kinda insulted his parents with my reaction. Yesterday my mother called to tell me that she thinks I have the coronavirus. I have seasonal allergies and no symptoms related to the virus. BTW. She then proceeded to tell me that scientists discovered the virus cannot live over 133 degrees Fahrenheit. At first I got excited that a breakthrough had been made and thought maybe I missed the news announcement. Then she said, "Yeah, so they are saying if you plug in a hairdryer and keep breathing in the hot air it will kill the virus and you will be fine." I immediately started cracking up because I thought she had made a joke. Then she got very offended and said it was a real scientific video she saw on Facebook. Facepum. Someone wanted to euthanize their dog because when she was put outside alone in heat, she found a chihuahua and had ugly puppies that cost a breeding session. When we asked what that had to do with anything, he said the chihuahua's sperm is forever inside of her and can make those ugly puppies instead of the purebred. This dog was definitely not a purebred. When we said that things don't work that way, he said, "I know for a fact they do. That's why my daughter is half N-word. N-word. Arp had my wife back when she was in her 20s and his sperm stayed inside her until mine activated it. And we all know, N. Sperm is more violent, so it won." He was serious. I think that is the single most fricked up thing in this whole thread. I'm in Australia and first heard the news of 9/11 on my morning radio, USA evening. I was stuck in traffic near the army base and they announced it with sirens. To start off with, I thought it was a comedy sketch that I didn't think was particularly funny. I had a pretty dark sense of humor, too. Then I realized it was news. Holy crap. I once worked with a 50-some-year-old guy at my first job, who also happened to be a former cokehead. I added in that detail because his mannerisms and communication were clearly affected by his prior drug use, and he would sometimes laugh when he was telling serious stories. One day he was telling me a story about him accidentally setting fire to the woods when he was trying to cremate his dead pet frog when he was a little boy. I was laughing my butt off. Strangely so was he, until he looked me dead in the eye, with a face that's as serious as they get, and says, "I'm still not over it." I knew that look and knew he was actually being serious despite being in absolute hysterics with me while telling his story. I immediately felt like a butthole. He was cool about it though, thankfully. Colleague's wife confronting me on speakerphone, "Are you having an affair with my husband?" My exact response was to roar laughing, managing to offend them both simultaneously. Good job, Jeek peeps. That was the perfect response. I see none other as acceptable. An intern at the vet I work at was a very sheltered Mormon. He came to work one day panicked. He had his first kiss the night before, asked the girl to marry him, and was concerned about his wedding date. He was absolutely convinced that he got her pregnant by kissing her. Absolutely convinced. It took me a long time to register what he was panicked about because it sounded so absurd. He'd delivered hundreds of kittens and puppies by then. I just thought he had also learned about human reproductive anatomy as well as animals by then. I came into my job and my boss was running a bit late for an unknown reason. Now, my boss is the type of person to joke about anything, no matter how serious it is, and will pull it off with a straight face. We never really take him seriously unless it is directly related to work. He comes in after being late and after a bit, just casually says our close co-worker had passed the previous night. I literally chuckled and said, "Yeah, sure," and blew it off. He then said that he died from a heart attack before he was set to go out with his buddies during the evening. I then said, "Oh wait, are you actually serious?" And he almost started crying right there and said yes. I miss that man to this day. Really chill guy with some cool hobbies and volunteer work. I also feel so bad for my boss because they had known each other for years. My estranged auntie sending me a message to disinvite me to my sick but alive father's funeral because, wait for it, I had had lunch with my little half brother and sister, and that is disrespectful to my father. My father never let me and half siblings meet before this lunch had occurred, and by meeting them, he disowned me. Literally, that's it. Just my fricked up family. Patron, I have a complaint. Me, yes, patron, there aren't enough books here. Me, looks around at the library that we are standing in. Me, yeah, it's weird. Sometimes people just take our books home with them, haha. Patron, you used to have more books. Me, oh. When I came back from lunch at work to find that one of the soft drink vendors, because at grocery stores they stock their own product, our stokers don't, loaded the pallets wrong and a tower of pallets fell, spilling soda tea glass everywhere. The boss, store manager, just so happened to walk into the back room at the same time, looked at me, and was like, "You saw it, you're cleaning it up." Thinking he was joking as he liked to do, I laughed it off. That's when he looked me dead in the eye and said, "No, I mean you're really cleaning it up because that's your job." Insert me spending the rest of my shift cleaning it up and my department head constantly calling me over intercom and getting yelled at and then written up the very next day because I didn't do my duties in addition to cleaning up that epic mess. Getting fired later that year was one of the best things to happen to me. New relationship with a super nice lady. Romantic weekend getaway. She suggests an afternoon float down a nearby river in a canoe. I know from experience canoeing is a serious test of relationship potential. My ex-wife and I couldn't even carry a canoe from the beach to the bay without getting into an argument. Anyhow, new relationship. Super nice lady. I'm determined to be a great team player and competent man. I have plenty of experience on the water. This should be a cinch. Canoe livery guy drives us to the drop-off, while he is taking the canoe off the trailer and telling us how long the float is and where the pickup point is. I am looking at the river. The wide, slow-moving river. The extremely slow-moving river. Along with the fact that it is a blustery windy day, I can't for the life of me tell which way the river flows. Some leaves are floating left, some leaves are floating right. I toss in a stick and it just floats around in a circle. I'm starting to sweat. I figure I have a 50/50 chance of guessing correctly, but if I guess wrong it could be a disaster. Having to ask is a total embarrassment. I'm hoping the livery guy makes some reference to direction, but no. I'm desperately hoping to see someone else float by, but no. I picture us paddling upstream for 2 hours and being lost on the river. Livery guy hands us our paddles and says, "So, if there's nothing else I'll see you in a couple hours. Have fun." I bite the bullet and decide that asking is the best way forward. Yeah, which way is downstream? Livery guy and super nice lady both laugh thinking I'm joking. No, I'm serious. Livery guy stops laughing and just points. I'm sure he was thinking that was the most stupid thing he had ever heard. We paddle down river a bit and super nice lady says, "Boy, am I glad you asked. I thought downstream was the other way." I met a girl at a former job, and we took a fancy to each other quickly. I only ever knew her by her nickname at this point, but we hung out for breakfast and I asked her name. She replied Bubbles and I began laughing in her face, thinking it's a joke. But no, her parents legitimately named this girl Bubbles, and I just had a deep, hearty laugh at how freaking stupid it was, in her face. You can't have been the only one. I mean, come on. Friend 1. Hey man, how come you decided to shave all your hair off? Friend 2. The chemo kind of decided for him. Friend 1. Frick off Joe. No seriously though, how come? Me. He's actually not joking. Funniest crap that ever happened to me. When I learned I had totally forgotten to attend almost every single class in one of my college courses. I forgot I had enrolled in it. A classmate asked me, haha, where have you been? You're never there when the teacher's taking attendance. And I was like, haha, funny. So anyway, oh wait, frick. Luckily it was only about a month into the semester and I managed to bring it back up to a low B. This is an anxiety dream that tons of people get and you literally lived through it. That's terrifying. One day my boss asked me if I'd be willing to do some testing for a new software our company had purchased. I already knew the program, so I said that was fine. He said I should expect to receive a meeting invite and the next day or so. The next morning I have a meeting invite and I accept. I didn't recognize anyone else who was invited, but assumed that they were from the vendor, which is normal. Time comes for the meeting and it's a dial-in sort of deal, which again is normal for this kind of thing. I dial in on time and everyone is saying their hellos and someone asks if I'm on the call, so I say yup, I'm here and things get started. The call starts with discussing some coding issues, which is fine but has nothing to do with me, so I figure they'll get to the testing stuff in a bit. That is until someone says, "Oh, resting fart face should look into that." At this point it dawns on me, this is not my meeting. So I said, "Sorry guys, but I think you have the wrong person." And there was stunned silence. "Who are you?" then they ask. I give my first and last name, title and location. Then someone starts laughing. This was the person who sent the meeting invite. They were trying to invite 2 other people to the meeting, one with the same first name as me and one with the same last name. Instead, he invited me, and apparently I sound just like one of those people, so no one suspected anything until I spoke up. It's ridiculous that tampon ads aren't banned. The fact they're allowed in public just goes to show that women have too much power. This wasn't in response to a particularly graphic ad that pushed any boundaries, just a generic type about comfort and reliability. Took me a while to realize that he wasn't joking. A random dude told me I'm girly because I know how to make scrambled eggs. Eggs are so gay. Years back I dated a girl who would lie compulsively about random things. The first big example, I went to her place. She'd just got Assassin's Creed for the first time and was really getting into the story. Like a week later she was telling me how she just discovered her family were related to assassins from Florence. I thought it was a joke, but turns out she was serious. Had changed her surname to something Italian on FB and had already spread the lie about on social media. In my head I was like, I literally watched you play Assassin's Creed last week, but she was gorgeous. Way out of my league. So I put up with this and other crazy crap for another 6 months before I gave up. was working a job while in early days of college. It was in a popular American restaurant chain where I had been successful as a host, cashier, waiter, and member of their retail store for just about a year. I accidentally forgot that I had swapped shifts with someone and missed the shift entirely. But I came in a few hours after it had started to sincerely apologize and let them know I was going home to change and I'd be right back. They brought me to the back and told me I was fired. I laughed at first because the boss was occasionally a bit of a jokester. Then I realized he was serious. To this day it gives me massive anxiety about underperforming in any job I have because I believe I will just be fired for it and they'll move on regardless of my tenure or knowledge. Back in college, me and a few of my guys would get lunch every Tuesday. Me and 2 of the guys are there as normal and are waiting for our last guy Todd. I start texting Todd and asking him about not being at lunch yet. The other guys start narrating what I should text. So I end up saying, Matt says get your roly-poly looking butt over here. Steve says that you're the personification of washing your hands and getting your sweater sleeves wet. It goes on like that for a bit. Then Todd calls me directly. He says he can't make it because his grandma died that morning and was headed home to see his family. The look on the other 2 guys' faces when I told them was priceless. There's a girl at work who used to call the icing sugar talcum powder. We didn't realize for weeks that she actually thought it was called that. She's actually a pretty switched on girl in general. She just has these weird things. Some guys where I worked were planning to gang up a girl in the parking lot when the shift ended. It wasn't a hilarious haha story even at first, but it really seemed like just really horribly inappropriate joking. It was a lunch table I sat down at during my break with guys around my age. At first I was just really uncomfortable and just tried to shut up and tune it out. But then they tried to include me and it escalated to them full out planning details and I was just about sick at the table. I was absolutely sure they were going to do it. So as soon as they were gone I went and told my dad, who was the safety guy at the plant. And he made sure cops were waiting for them in the parking lot and that girl had someone walking her to her car from then on. Whole thing was so fricked. My favorite musician is David Hasselhoff. I laughed straight in her face. Mind you, this is 30 years ago, but even then. I was on a Christian camping week here in the UK. There were some Americans with us. I found a stone on the beach with some great fossils in it and was showing it to some kids. One of the Americans started talking about how God had put fossils in the earth to mislead the vain who trusted their own observations rather than the Bible. I, naturally, thought he was joking and burst out laughing. And he was just so offended. He complained about me to the people running the camp, and they thought he was joking at first and laughed too. A previous co-worker of mine went on a 5-ish minute tirade about how much he hated me, to my face, while at work, in front of 10 other people, including our boss. Up until that point I had never met someone who had disliked me so strongly, at least no one who said anything about it, so I thought he was joking for the first minute or so. I stood there with this incredulous grin on my face until he paused for breath and one of my other co-workers asked if he was serious. He said frick yeah I'm being serious, and started accusing me of being racist, disrespectful, and of favoritism, none of which were true. That quickly wiped the grin off my face and I stood there dumbfounded until my boss came over and told him to stop talking and to walk away. Everyone stood around kinda shell-shocked for a bit before we laughed it off. No one knew where it had come from, and he spent the rest of his time there trying to convince everyone else that I was evil, but they all ignored him. I am extremely grateful for that. He could have made that job a complete heckhole. Is there a J in the alphabet? This was a year 12 student. Her name was Judith. I was taking a long leg cast off a kid about 2.53 years old. After I get the cast split open and pull it off, mother says, "Oh, his toe fell off." I'm like, "Heh, nice one." The kid was in the cast because his small toe had been nearly amputated and reattached. The doc was hoping what tissue was still connected would be enough to vascularize the distal portion. It wasn't and the kid's toe died and fell off. Oh, which to choose. In middle school I had a habit of putting my foot in my mouth. Once I was in my English teacher's room finishing an assignment after school while she was talking to her parent. I finished and moved toward her desk but stopped near her door so I wouldn't interrupt their conversation. As I was waiting, I could see directly to the girls' bathroom where I saw a boy my age but not a student, small school, pacing in front of the girls' bathroom. I thought it odd and watched for a moment. Each time the door opened, he would peer as best he could into the bathroom, and I knew the JV cheerleaders were in there changing for practice. Alarmed, I said, there's a boy trying to look into the girls' bathroom." The teacher and parent stopped and quickly approached to watch the pacing boy. The parent then said, "That's my son." I started to laugh until I realized I was the only one. It was very awkward for a few moments till she excused herself, gathered her son, and left. The teacher still brings it up when I see her and laughs. For those of you curious of the outcome, he was on the spectrum and his sister, whom he idolized, wasn't there. He was waiting for her to come out. I used to work at a funeral home that did a yearly Christmas celebration. It was super nice. We'd invite all the families we had served that year for a mass and coffee after, and they'd get a lovely metal snowflake with their deceased loved one's name on it. The whole point was about not spending the first Christmas after a loss alone. So it was run by staff volunteering their time, and I figured, hey, let's help this year. There was probably about 250 people there, and boy did they make a mess of the reception hall. Hundreds of plates and cups to be washed, coffee spills, cake crumbs, food everywhere. Not to mention the bathrooms, chapel, hallways, lobby, and entrance needed to be cleaned. No biggie. I'm part-time surplus staff for receptions anyway, so this is crap I've dealt with before. Plus there's like 30 of us. Once the reception was over and everyone went home, my manager congratulated all of us and said since we did such a good job, the salaried employees could go home and the part-time staff could clean everything up. I was the only part-time staff member. Of course I laughed and pointed out I was the only part-time staff there. My manager proceeded to laugh and then said, "Oh, I'm sure you don't mind. Alright everyone, let's go and I'll see you all when the holidays end." Only one salary employee stayed behind to help me clean. My mother's former co-worker who took pity on me, and it took us about 6 hours to clean everything. I never volunteered to help with the Christmas gathering again. For my 14th day I asked my mom what she got for me. She told me she bought me a vest. I laughed right at her face and went on a rant about how I hate vests. I thought she knew that beforehand. Fast forward to my day and I received a brand new vest from her. I felt so bad. This reminds me of the time I asked a friend what she was going as for Halloween. We were 10 at the time. She said a lobster and I laughed and said, "That would be so stupid." Then she showed up for Halloween in a full-on lobster costume. I was mortified. Through high school I had a friend who was rather secretive about his crushes. There was one crush in particular that he refused to name, so I spent weeks guessing and pestering him. But I wore him down and he agreed to tell me. So I said finally, "Who is this girl?" And he said, "It's not a girl." I thought he was joking, so I laughed and said, "No, really, who is it?" And he just stared at me. Super embarrassing for me, but he and his boyfriend are very happy now. Many years ago I was having the "what are you into" in the bedroom conversation with a girlfriend. We were at that point in the relationship. It starts vanilla enough and escalates to fetish and kink talk. At one point the conversation went like this: "Would you let me put spaghetti in your dong hole?" I chuckle. Haha, what? No, thinking her next question would be about something else. What if it was cooked? How the heck would that help? What if it breaks? What if it was something more solid? "You're not putting anything in my dong hole." She got very upset and went off about how she needs to be with an explorative and open person. She was legit mad at me because I told her I'm not into getting things stuffed into my dong. Bullet dodge, my man. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.